In this video, we want to talk about the Pathfinder function. And the Pathfinder function is found within your built-ins tab, in the CP or the Global Functions tab, and the Tools folder. And this Pathfinder allows us to create an automated animation or spline path for an animation. So the way that this works is that we're going to go back into my global primitives here. I'm just going to select any type of object, a 3D object here. I'm going to use a sphere. You can use whatever you want. And I'm also just going to throw a material on it so that we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to go back into my Functions tab, or in my case, my CP tab. I'm going to go into my Tools folder, and I'm going to take this Pathfinder and slide it down onto my sphere object. Now, once I do that, you can see how it automatically added this animation here. And we didn't even add any type of keyframes, but it just automatically added this animation. So if I click on my Pathfinder and go up into the editor window here, what we have here first is the shape type. And we have a circle, we have a wave, we have a spring, and we have a line. I'm first going to change this to circle. And you can see how it quickly made an adjustment down here. And we have below this a keyframe smooth level, which is set to 3 by default. So I'm just going to leave it as is, and I'm just going to come down here to the play button and hit play. Now, we didn't create any type of keyframes, we just added this Pathfinder and it automatically added these keyframes. So you can see that when we hit play, how it's creating this path for the circle to fly around in. Now underneath we have this keyframe smooth level. It's set to 3 by default. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to linear, and then we're going to go ahead and hit play. And when we hit play on this time, you can see that when it hits each corner here, it's a sharp or more of a linear type animation. So these keyframe smooth levels will adjust our animations. And if we go to the other extreme here and set it to 6 and hit play, you can see how it curves a little bit more, but it's more of a tighter curve. So as it comes around to the last curve here, it does curve, but again a little bit tighter. So if we change it back to 3, then that's kind of the mid ground of our circular path. Now we also have this thing here called direction, set to clock or counterclockwise. If we change it to counterclockwise, it just simply goes in the opposite direction. You can hit stop and just rewind, and that will take it back to the beginning. You also have a radius here, so we can increase the radius or decrease the radius and make the circle path a little bit smaller here. So as it comes around, you can see that the path is now a little bit smaller because we adjusted the radius. Now the resolution, we can also adjust that. And to do that, what I'm going to do is make sure your bounding box is on, and I'm going to come into my render window. I'm going to right click and turn on my animation. So it now shows us the path of this animation. And I'm just going to increase the radius here a little bit. Now as we come up here and to our keyframe smooth levels, if we go to linear or change it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, you can see how it's changing the path of this animation. I'm going to go to 3 here, and then we can also add this thing called resolution. So as I add resolution, you can see that it's actually adding points along this spline, which will make it a little bit smoother. So I'm going to go ahead and reset that back. Again, this starting point, if we just want to rotate this, we can choose a different starting point for the animation to begin. So we have our variables set here, and one other thing about the resolution is that if we go into this stage, what happens here is that it created these points along our animation. These points here stand for the resolution. So if I go back into my Pathfinder, I'm going to increase this resolution to, let's say, 22, and then I come back into the stage. You can see how it also increased each one of these points here on our animation within the stage. So I'm going to go back into the Pathfinder here, and this time instead of using circle, we're going to change it to wave. And I'm just going to reset my resolution, and we'll go to wave. And you can see when we change it to wave, our spline or path changes, but we still have the same relative parameters up here that we can adjust. So again, if we want to go to linear, we can change each one of these settings here for our keyframes. So if I set it to 3, the default value, and we hit play, you can just see how this sphere here is going to animate along the path. Again, speed is depending upon the path. And again, one way to adjust the speed is to come into the stage, and you can adjust the speed by dragging your timeline animation either left or right to speed it up or slow it down. Back in the Pathfinder here, again, if we turn our animation on, you can see our spline. So we have our different settings here for the wave. We can increase the wave length, we can increase the wave amplitude, again the resolution we can adjust, the count we can take up, and the start point we can adjust as well. You can see as we adjust the start point how this affects the spline. Now each spline here that we have each point. So even though we have these points set up, we can still come in here and click and manually drag these. So we have the actual points themselves and the handles. So if we want to take each individual handle of the spline, we can then adjust each individual parameter of this as well. What's more, in the Pathfinder, we also have two other type settings here. We have a spring setting. So when I change it to the spring setting, you can see that in this spline path how it kind of looks like a double line. Now again, we have our same keyframe smooth levels here, so we can change these to linear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and we'll set it to 3 for default. We also again have the direction clockwise or counterclockwise, and in this case, like the circle, we have an axis. So we have an XY and an XZ axis. So we change it to an XZ axis, you can kind of see how this sphere will fly around this spring path in the motion that we set. So if we change our axis to XZ, we rewind our timeline and we hit play, you can kind of see how this sphere is now going to animate along the path of this spring. So a couple of different settings that we have for the spring here are the radius. So again, we can increase or decrease the radius of it. We have a radius change, which will affect our angle of it. We have a distance, which will again kind of adjust the angle or the vertical angle of it. We have a resolution here, so we can add more points along that spline. We also have a count. So as we move the count, we can increase or decrease the amount of vertical splines that we have, or how long or how high this sphere will animate. So one thing about this is that if you do increase the count on the spring, now since there are more lines basically, or a higher height, it's going to go a little bit faster. So if you are on the spring, adding the count is going to make the animation go a little bit faster. Or again, like I said, you can go into the stage and make it faster or slower by dragging it left or right this way. The last setting within the Pathfinder is the line. So if we come back, we'll reset our animation here, drag it to 0. We change our shape type to line. Again, we'll turn on our animation, and here you can see our line. So in this case, in the line, we have an axis that we can choose. We can go X, Y, or Z. We also have a length, so we can increase the length of this, and again we have a resolution as well, which we can increase. Now with the line, what we do have again is the choice or option to drag our individual keyframe handles here like this. So I have mine set to linear right now, and as we adjust each one of these, you can kind of see that it's going to create a different path. Again, if you change it to a smoother animation, we have our handles here that we can adjust this way as well. If you do go into the views, you can also adjust your animation this way, and you can see your spline here that you can adjust. Again, same way as adjusting it in the render window, just a different way to do it with your different views here.